Hello and welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Worst, a podcast where we discuss movie trilogies and decide which film is a dirty, shady cider. Joining me today...
I'm Luke Morgan. Chicks, dicks, listen up.
It began as a prank and it ended in murder.
Okay, well, this week we're covering Fear Street, a trilogy of movies that I feel like came out of nowhere on Netflix. Did you guys have any connection to Fear Street before this trilogy came out?
None.
No.
I didn't realize it was like an R.L. Stein thing. Obviously, I sort of grew up with Goosebumps,
Yeah.
and the Choose Your Own Adventure sort of books as well. And that's just what horror was to me as a kid. Didn't know anything about Fear Street until the third one came out on Netflix. And I saw so much hype, and I had kept seeing things about Fear Street, and then I was like, oh my God, this is a trilogy that Netflix have released over a 6-week period or whatever. And I was like, this is cool. So I started to watch it and did it in 3 nights. I was like hooked on it after the first one. So
Yeah, I had no idea. I remember I was talking to my brother about it. He mentioned how this was the big project that R.L. Stein did once he left Goosebumps. So he sort of, worked on those for 10 years or whatever, and then he's worked on the Fear Street books. But I mean, who's thought about R.L. Stein really in the past 20 years? Nobody. But yeah, I saw these films, pop up a week before. They were like, on all the film sites, they were like, hey, this is coming to Netflix soon. And then I was like, okay, cool, schlocky horror film. I'm into that.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't heard about them until you guys were talking about them, and we thought it was a good idea to do a podcast about it. So,
social relevance.
Yeah.
That's right. We're up with it. We're hip.
Yeah.
Let's kick off with some stats. Now, stats get weird because it's Netflix and they're not going to release how much money they've made off of these, but
No.
we can have a look at their Metacritic scores. So, Fear Street Part 1, 1994, 67% on Metacritic. Part 2, 1978, 61 on Metacritic. And then Part 3, 1666, 68 on Metacritic. How do you guys feel about those scores?
You guys like to throw a lot of Rotten Tomatoes at a site I like called Rotten Tomatoes, but I agree mostly with Rotten Tomatoes scores more than Metacritic. Metacritic seems really low in every movie. Like every time they do one, I'm like, it's like, I don't know if they're like the edgy reviewers that are like, it's not that good. But
these are all old men. None of them are edgy.
But no, but I don't know. And I guess Rotten Tomatoes can be the other thing where Suicide Squad's 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, but
I was gonna point out Suicide Squad because we had this discussion on the weekend about at the end of that movie, you turned to me and said, I can't believe that was 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's the first thing I said as the movie finished. Also, just random note on Suicide Squad, the first thing that was said after that movie finished, there was silence for about 20 seconds, and then the 7-year-old sitting in the back seat went, that was a lot of killing, which got the biggest laugh. Got the biggest laugh from the whole cinema, I think. But I think they had these movies, Rotten Tomatoes, the first one at 80%, the second one at
89,
and then
the third at 93%.
Yeah, which I don't agree with that necessarily, but I agree with that range of scores more for these movies than I do like low 60s or anything like that.
You really think these movies are in the high 80s, low 90s?
Oh, dude, I can't wait to get into these. I adored these films. I really did.
Damn.
I really adored these films. So
I mean, I agree
Yeah.
Metacritic's kind of low, but I feel like 90s is too high. 60s might be too low, but 90s is too high.
No, I think the Metacritic's pretty accurate. Like, because you got to remember, if everything's a 90% film, that's like borderline, Godfather sort of stuff. Like,
exactly.
Films in the top, that's really, really high. And anything below 50 is just kind of, it's meddling. It's like a film that's 50 is 2.5 stars. Like, yeah, that's fine. I think there's a lot of films that you don't want to say is like 50%, but when you think about it, it's like, yeah, I'll probably never watch it again, but it's all right. Like, that's a 50% film. So I think around the 60 mark is where I would put this totally. Like, I think 70 is getting into those are good films, and I would recommend them to everybody.
See, I think, I believe the way Rotten Tomatoes is done is it's basically a percentage of people who liked it and recommended it. Yeah. So it's like 90% of people who watch this recommended this film.
No. Have we talked about this?
We
before?
haven't.
No. Okay, so here's why Rotten Tomatoes is so bullcrap.
Okay.
So all Rotten Tomatoes does is it equates the mood. So if it is positive, if the review is positive, that is a certified fresh rating. So if you've got a 90% film, all that means is 90% of viewers said it was good, which I think is better than 60% on their end. So you can have a film that is actually, everyone said it's 61%. So we're like, that's not very good. but that would make that film appear as 100% on
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes because everyone said
Mm.
it was good.
Everyone's
Whereas
positive on it.
Whereas with what just happened a few months ago, Citizen Kane was just recently taken down from 100% on Rotten Tomatoes because this review was discovered from the 30s that said it wasn't very good. So one review said it wasn't good, so now that only has like a 99%.
Putting Paddington 2 over Citizen Kane.
Which makes no sense, you see, because it's
I agree with it, but whatever.
Even though everybody else said this is actually a 100% film, because one person says it's bad, it's like, oh, this is no longer there. Rotten Tomatoes score is very inaccurate. Because the fact you can have a 60% film be perceived as a 100% film makes no sense.
Is this where all the hatred for Rotten Tomatoes comes from? Like they've offended you with Citizen Kane being dropped, and you're like,
oh, that was
this vendetta.
That was the icing on the cake, man. I've been gunning it for Rotten Tomatoes for years, and when that happened, I was like, you don't come at the Kane.
Well, okay, we'll get into it more later, but I'm interested in hearing some thoughts about this trilogy with its rating of 60% or whatever.
Yeah, well, I can kick it off if you want.
Yeah, please.
I thought these movies were fine. Like, I went into them without any expectations. I think I was a bit bored in the first one, and then I feel like it did pick up a bit. Like, I actually quite enjoyed part 3. Without going too much into which I think is the best. I think I enjoyed part 3 more than the others. I'm not sure why. It just seemed to. I don't know. Maybe the style. Like, I did enjoy that each movie kind of is its own style of genre, like style of horror.
Yeah.
A little bit like the first one's these classic.
You got Scream, Friday the
slashes,
13th,
Scream,
The Witch or whatever.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that part of it. I think there's some cool scenes. I really enjoy the bread slicer scene from the first movie. Where she,
stand out.
The most brutal kill, I think.
Absolutely.
It's like, it's brutal.
It comes out of nowhere.
It comes out of nowhere. That's the thing. Like, watching these movies, I'm like, oh, is this going to be a horror movie where most of the people survive? And then we get that scene.
I think because they're children and the vibe of these movies, it's very much like It versus like meets Stranger Things, and you don't expect 11 to get her head chopped off like at the end of Stranger Things. And so it had that vibe going for it. And I think because it's one of those horror, it's like a different sort of horror movie where you kind of like all the characters. It's not like most horror films, you dislike the characters and it's kind of exciting. Oh, they're going to get killed. Please kill them. Please kill them. By the end of all these films, I'm like, oh, don't kill that person. No. Oh, and they're dead. But with the first one especially, it got to that point. I'm like, they're going to survive. And every time she got closer and closer to that bread cutter, I was like, and she's going to get rescued now. Okay, now it's going to happen. And then her brain started going through it. And I was like, oh, God, this is not what I was expecting.
There's no turning back now. Yeah, there's always like a token racist or something that gets killed off early, and these movies didn't really have that character, right? Like,
I mean, they sort of do with her, with Sam's boyfriend.
But it's not like, but even him, he's not even that bad of a dude. Like, he's just a typical jock. It's not like
he's
like,
a jock.
Got a Nazi tattoo on his chest. Like, he's not like this, really, really bad guy. Grana, I just want to ask, since you've mentioned that, with horror in general, do you prefer that sort of film, like The Witch type horror, as opposed to your slasher flicks or anything like that? Or it's just...
Can we call it folk horror, please?
Folk horror, sorry.
That's the genre name.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm like, to be honest, I'm not the biggest horror fan. Like, I don't seek out horror movies generally. Occasionally, I'm like really in the mood for it, or like if it's a really, really highly recommended one, I'll get into it. But yeah, I wouldn't say slashers are high up on my like movies I enjoy. Probably more like Friday the 13th, like this this unstoppable killer coming at you. I enjoy that more, like what we get in the second film.
Why do I have this feeling you recommended Scream to me? I just have this weird...
I'm 100% sure I didn't recommend Scream to you. I wouldn't recommend Scream to anyone.
Do you know what? I'm honestly probably mixing up like you saying about the sprinklers coming on in High School Musical to like the sprinkler scene from Scream 1, I think. I'm just
very similar scenes.
Yeah.
Inspired by.
Conan, you're a horror guy, I feel.
Yeah, I'm the opposite to Grana. Horror is like
Conan's family is a horror family. All his family loves horror.
Yeah, it's pretty true. Out of like at least 4 out of 5, but probably 5 out of 5 siblings, we're all horror buffs. I don't know. It's
sorry. Can I just say the main time I watch horror is when Conan's oldest brother comes to town. He always brings horror movies over, and we have to watch them.
And just there's always events. There's an event you're at, and you just somehow a horror film finds its way on.
Pretty much.
That's very fun. That's very funny. I think horror is the kind of genre that I just sort of I can. It's kind of like my happy place. I can just put on a horror film, and I'm like, even if it's not going to be good. We mentioned this before. Even if it's a bad horror film, that's still okay. Like the bar for horror is a lot lower to what I'll watch to any other film. I'm not going to watch a bad action film. I'm not going to watch a bad character drama. But I will watch.
A bad comedy is a bad night. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
boring, but a bad horror is a comedy, right?
That's a good
pleasure. Yeah,
that's a good saying for life. A bad comedy is a bad night. But yeah, a bad horror is fun. Like horror is just a genre that's entertaining. And I think it's because it's the most self-aware genre. Like it knows what it is. It's designed in a very specific way. The tropes are all there. Pretty much every horror film knows in some way how to play to those or to subvert those to keep you on edge. Like it's really, from like a filmmaking perspective, horror is just really fun to watch because it's like, how are they going to try to unsettle me here? How are they going to try to make me feel things that most other genres don't need to bother with? So I just watch horror films because it's always like an exercise in, I don't know, in the craft in a lot of ways. So I love horror.
See, I don't know. I'm not a horror guy, like because I avoided it most of my life. Horror films. My brothers were kind of assholes when I was a kid, and just I was like terrified of the Scream mask. Like it was just something when they watched Scream because they were teenagers at the time, and I was 8-year-old or whatever, and they chased me around the house with a knife. Like I was terrified of the Scream mask. I was terrified of horror. Never watched any horror. In recent years, I've sort of I partake in it more and I can enjoy them. There's stuff like Hereditary or weird horror games that they stick with me forever, and I see weird creatures down the hallway at night and I get freaked out by it. But I don't know, slasher flicks like a kind of that sort of fun movie that I can watch and I don't. It's not scary. It's more like an entertaining sort of film, and it's a weird thing to say. Like these films were kind of comfort films. It was weird. Like it's had like the 90, the 80, the 90s, this like 70s, or it felt like 80s, but like 70s, and the classic 1600s, which my favorite times. But I don't know, there was something comforting about them, like the vibe of them, and just I don't know, I really enjoyed them.
No, you're right, because it's riffing on that that's 80s nostalgia wave that we're still riding since Stranger Things probably, really sort of. I don't know if it kicked it off, but really sort of
it
made it public and made it like
reinvigorated it.
Yeah, made it the forefront of everyone's mind. So we're still riding that, and these are like you're right because you've got 94, which is essentially an 80s slash like Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all of those films. You've got 1978, which is just every camp slasher ever made. And then you've got 66, which is a folk horror film, like in the vein of The Witch, in the vein of stuff by Ben Wheatley, in the vein of The Wicker Man. Like these are three genre films that if you've seen any sort of horror, you know about. And if you even somewhat enjoy it, like that's why I came to this. It was like, oh yeah, a film that's riffing on this stuff. Like I will watch 3 films that are riffing on these genres. But look, I'm interested if you don't like horror, why you were like, cool, 3 horror films. I'll watch those.
So it was what was popular at the moment. Like Twitter was all a buzz about it. Like people I follow are like, I know a few the guys from Easy Allies were talking up, and I know they're horror fans, but they were talking up and like saying like it's great vibes, it's Stranger Things, and the pitch of Stranger Things meet It. That sold me on it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I looked up the reviews and seen like a 90% and 88%. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like Alicia enjoys horror films. Like this will be fun to watch. And I really enjoyed them. Like I don't know. They're possibly my favorite horror films I've watched. Like
that's a tall claim.
No, okay. So what flaws are there with these films?
Oh, I mean, we'll wait till the categories, I guess, because there's
okay. Like I just feel like there's nothing I can really pick out from these movies where I'm like, oh, I didn't really like that, or there's plot holes there, or anything like that. I felt like it was just like it knew what it was. It was entertaining. I liked the characters, and the kills were great too and brutal, and yeah.
Grant, I think you enjoy these less than us. What I don't know. Did you have any main things you're like, yeah, that's what I didn't like about them? Or?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Maybe it was the mood I was in. Like that, I do feel like they should appeal to me. Like I am right into that 80s nostalgia we're getting at the moment, and this is a bit tangential to our horror discussion, but I feel like there's been in media recently a big resurgence in like stories about small towns, and that's something I relate
Mm,
to a lot. Like I just feel like we were talking about earlier, Mayor of Easttown is all about this small town where everybody knows each other. Fear
yeah.
Street, Stranger Things. I'm sure there's a million other examples of um,
Mm.
yeah, stories about small towns, and that's something I relate to a lot. So, like, I feel like I should have liked these a lot. I don't know. I just didn't find them that exciting. Like, it wasn't until the third one where I was actually kind of invested and kind of like I care about these characters a bit. Like, I feel like the first one, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like the first one is very loaded on the back end. Like, I didn't really care about anything that happened until they got back to the shopping center or whatever it ends in. Like,
Mall,
yeah,
which
just
is
like
the same mall from Stranger Things as well.
yeah, right.
No, does the
Yeah.
first one end? No, the first one ends in the. It's like the grocery store.
Yeah, it's a grocery
Oh, yeah,
store.
it ends in the grocery store. Sorry, but it starts in
Yeah,
the mall. Yeah.
yeah. The third one
Uh,
ends in the mall. Yeah.
Yeah, and the second one, I feel like there's just a lot of running around in caves underground and not really doing anything. I don't know.
I
I don't think I have good opinions about these movies. Like, I don't think I have a strong reason why I don't like them. They just didn't click with me, I suppose.
I get.
Conan,
I
you've had
think.
enough time to try and think of an answer. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
I think for me, both their gift and their curse is the same thing. Is that they're so, like I said, they know what they are and they're riffing on something that already exists. Like they are clearly just they're genre pieces. Like this is a camp slasher. This is a suburban slasher. This is a folk slasher. And so that kind of makes them like fun junk food in the same way that you get like we've talked about it before, but Bruce Willis makes the same action film every year, it seems, and it's like failure to die and act of vengeance and blood on the sword
Hey,
or some.
dude, don't criticize Blood on the Sun or Hostage.
Hostage is
Wait,
actually
no,
yeah,
it's
no,
Tears of the Sun. Tears of
yeah,
the Sun.
Hostage is actually an all right film. But anyway,
Yeah.
but like those films get made because it's like there's nothing new about them, but people are like, yeah, I'm in for an hour and a half crime caper, and same with these. It's like I'm in for a camp slasher film. I'm in for these things, but they also don't do anything new. I think they try to have a big grand philosophy at the end of it, and I think it falls really flat. But I think like the fact that these are so clearly like, hey, look, you are watching Friday the 13th, but with the girl from Stranger Things instead.
Mm.
Like that's both really fun, but that's also like, yeah, cool. But I have seen Friday the 13th, so
But okay, see, we'll actually get into the topics and stuff like that. But I just want to say, like, I disagree with that. It knows what it is and it's following those stuff, but I feel like it doesn't have. It's not plagued by tropes. Like, it doesn't have a lot of tropes in this film. Like, it's like I said earlier. Obviously, it has like generic stuff, but I feel like the characters are likable. While every other horror film, I don't care if people die. In this one, I didn't want them to die. And it took a while to click. Now, the first one, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, it's the standard horror film. Who's going to die? And then by the end, I was like, oh no, that girl got killed by the bread cutter. Oh my God, this guy got an axe in his head.
Mm.
Like, I didn't want them to die. And they died. And I was like, okay. And then getting into two, like with two, there's not a kill for like the first hour or so, but I was enjoying that camp vibe and it was building and the anticipation and everything like that. And I was hooked halfway through number two, and then straight away I wanted to watch three straight away, and I really enjoyed three as well. I just feel like I liked all the characters. It didn't follow those tropes of like, oh, this dude's a bad. Like they're all bad characters. Like, and it's like I don't know if it's just different. There's like there's kids getting killed, which is usually a taboo thing that horror films like avoid, but it's brutal and there's a creepiness to it where it's not just it's Friday the 13th with the girl from Stranger Things, but there's so much other stuff going on in the background with like these weird rituals and like the stuff underground and this weird blob thing and what's happening with this red moss, the
Mm.
fly, like which sister is it that's going to get killed? These weird other like characters coming back that we don't know too much about, like the creepy as hell baseball bat boy.
That's the movie I wanted. I wanted the
Oh
baseball bat boy.
man,
all the
he
all the
haunted my nightmares.
all the milkman.
And the milkman
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Creepy as F.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I genuinely liked all these characters and watching the third one and all of the characters from both movies coming back and playing characters again, it was like and I think it nails those three genres. Like the witch one nails that, I feel like. And it's like it's got its own sort of creepy thing with the the church guy and the eyes missing out of all the kids, and
Great scene.
possibly the most disturbing thing, the pig eating all its
Yeah.
babies was messed up.
See, I think that's what I liked about the third one. I think it had really good, like it was really tense, and it had this really, it was just really creepy. Like I got really creeped out by that movie. The other movie, I was just like, oh, when is someone going to die in an interesting way? Like, I don't know.
That's I don't know. I feel like that's
Do you
folk horror
disagree
has.
with me?
All right, so 2 points. So, firstly, I think folk horror has an unfair advantage over like other horror, where 80s horror is now so like schlocky in our minds because we've seen it so much, and it's like it's a familiar setting. Whereas the 1600s is so alien to us, and so it's very easy to be like, hear a Puritan speaking in like ye old English, and they're all just like, the devil's done something. Like it's I don't know. It's kind of easy to make a creepy folk horror film because even like a good
unique.
even a comedy set in the 1600s is terrifying because it's like, oh, you've got gangrene from that cut. Well, you'll be dead in 6 days.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But to your other point, it's also like it's a trilogy of horror films, so I think it's got a bit of spare time with its characters. So by the end of the third film, of course, you're going to like them. You've spent 3 films with them. For me, I don't think the characters are overly like fascinating. None of them. No one's overly new. No one's like, here's a whole new take on a fresh thing. They're all just kind of like,
But
they're
like,
characters, but they're nothing
character
crazy.
flow. And like, I don't know. You can't tell me like when the girl goes through the bread cutter at the end of the first one, you're like, oh no. Like you weren't like, fuck,
no,
hell yeah.
I didn't care at all. Like I was excited.
Okay.
I was excited she got killed. So like I want to see blood. I wasn't like, oh no, that cheerleader who was going to hook up with the young kid. And there's age issues there. Like, what's the age difference there? I don't know.
Let's get into the categories.
Anyway,
Let's discuss it
we'll
more.
talk about this later, Cone.
I think obviously it deserves to be a trilogy because it was designed as one. Like, I don't think it's really hard to like say these movies don't deserve to be a trilogy, right?
No, so it's like the quintessential trilogy. Like it's made for that thing. It's got its arc. Apparently, it was originally meant to be cinema releases a month apart, and then halfway through it became a Netflix sort of deal with someone who was in charge of Stranger Things and stuff. So that's where they got that connection and stuff. But yeah,
it works better as a Netflix release. I can't imagine many people would go to the cinemas a month apart to be like, I'm going to see the next one of this. Like,
it could have been interesting. Like if done right and people had actually gone to it and been like the speculation for the next month online, it could have been fun. Like it could have been, but it probably wouldn't have succeeded.
Yeah, I just don't think it would have. I think people would have either forgotten in that time, or I don't know if people would have cared enough.
Especially with the pandemic going. No one's going to the cinema, so
precisely.
Yeah, like just the timing as well is really rough for these movies. But I think the recaps at the start were maybe the most redundant recaps ever. I don't know. You can skip.
Yeah,
just unnecessary.
That's true.
So, how are we going to decide which film is the worst? Do you want to go first, Luke? Since you're the fanboy.
I'm I thought we were all going to be all jolly and loving this trilogy, but
I like these films.
Yeah,
I think they're good films.
I don't have anything against them. I just don't feel very strongly for them.
So I was kind of torn on this. Before we started the podcast, I was like, I don't know which one I like the most, and I don't know which one I liked the least. They all sort of blend as this one 3-night experience where I watched all 3. If I have to put one on that worst list, I would probably put the first one. I enjoy the vibe of like the camp, like Friday the 13th vibe more than the first one. There's obviously the build at the start where it's like the high school shady side versus sunny side and all that sort of stuff, and more of that drama. I don't know. It's difficult. Like it's close. I wouldn't say like I dislike the first one at all, but I feel like I think what's her name? Is it Ruby? The girl that sings and
Ruby
I found her one of the least interesting of like the horror killers. So yeah. It is what it is. I enjoy the Scream vibes and stuff like that in the mall at the start with, and then it's kind of interesting with the whole like the killer gets killed straight away, like in the opening scene as well. So you're like, okay, what's going on? There's something deeper here at work. But I would say the first one, but I don't have many reasons for it. It's just I probably enjoy the other 2 more, and that's all it is. So
yeah, I think these films are hard to sort of, because they're all directed by Lee Janiak. They're all obviously written by the same people. You can tell they were all sort of filmed probably like very close together. So I think it's like it feels very much like one film. So it is kind of hard to be like this one is definitively worse. I think for me, number 3 is the worst. Oh, controversial, everyone says.
Why?
All right, so
Mine is offended.
I love folk horror. Folk horror is my jam, man. The Witch, phenomenal. Like I'm all about it. I think it's such a cool genre. I think we need more creepy period pieces in our lives. I think 3 suffers. Firstly, from that really weird, disjointed, like halfway through the film, it's like, oh, you're not watching a folk horror film anymore. You're watching the continuation of the main story. And I'm like, oh, that really took.
I loved it when it was like 1994 Part 2. I was like,
Nah.
hell yeah, we're back. I was
Nah,
excited.
I didn't like that. I think Part 3 is the most derivative as well. It's clearly just like 1 and 2 are kind of, they have a lot of like subversive twists, like you said, Luke. With number 1, it opens with a very clear homage to Scream with Maya Hawke getting killed.
Yeah.
And then the killer is instantly killed. It's like, oh, shit, okay, so this is Scream, but it's not Scream.
Yeah.
And so it's clearly sort of showing you, hey, it's got a few more cards that is playing close to the chest, which I like. 3 is really just like a very weak witch trial story. Like if you've heard anything about the Salem witch trials, that's pretty much what that film is. And that's why it only goes for an hour. I don't think there's anything twisty or turvy about it. You're watching the whole thing. It's like, yeah, she's going to get accused. Like there's no tension. There's nothing. I find it very derivative.
I'll just say before Granite comes in, I'd kind of agree with you. What 3? I actually enjoyed the part 2 of 1994, part of 3 the most of number 3, and I enjoyed the ending and the whole scene that they have in the mall with drawing the killers in and the water guns filled with blood. That is what I think about with 3 the most, and what I like about it, how it concluded the story, and like finding out that good is evil. How
did I not pick up on that?
Oh, it's like I enjoyed that, and I think that's what put 3 over 1 for me. But as a whole, I would probably put 3 as my worst, actually, because I do think, as much as I enjoyed like the 1660s part of it as well, I find that the weakest part of them. Whether that's just me I wasn't around much during that time, and so I don't know if that's just me, not relating so much. But it does have that. I watched
tough.
The Witch based off your recommendations, and I still have weird visions from that movie.
So disturbing.
It definitely was almost maybe the creepiest part. Like I said, the whole the church with the kids in it and the pig scene is possibly the 2 most disturbing things from the trilogy for me personally. But like I don't know. I do like Robert Pattinson though in the 3rd one.
But not Robert Pattinson.
Sorry. Make a pin here. I want to talk about the actors and the accents and stuff. But Grana, I want to hear your point first.
I don't know that the acting's that great in the 1666 part. I'll give you that. But for me, the twist of the 1666 part is you find out the truth of what happened to Fear, but also who the real bad guy is, which is good. Like that's where it's flipping it on its head, not necessarily the tropes of the genre. But yeah, I agree. Like to me, I personally got the most invested in 3. Like I really enjoyed the tension and the creepiness of like that church scene and the pigs, and I really enjoyed 1994 part two because that to me felt like what I wanted out of 1994 part 1. Because I feel like in the first movie they kind of set it up like, oh, we're going to go to the supermarket and it's going to be like Home Alone but with killers. Like we're going to set up these traps, we've got this blood and all this stuff, and then it all just falls apart and they don't really pull anything off. And I think I like horror where the good guys kind of get one over on the bad guys. Like that's the horror that I really get into. And you don't get that out of the first 2.
Yeah, and that showdown is really cool. Like I love that it's a creative take on it. It's like using blood in water guns. Like I was kind of thinking of Palm Springs, how that actually has this weird way of solving the riddle of like how you get out of this time loop, where she studies physics and like actually finds a way to like, here's how you solve this this paradox. I just really like it's like, hey, that thinks outside the box. And the same with this. This is a very obscure, weird, like we've got to spray each other with blood and it's going to distract these like worker bee killers. It's interesting.
And I did enjoy like oh, you have to kill yourself. Like, you have to die for this to be over.
Mm.
We know this pill concoction because someone else has done it before. Like, that was
Yeah.
fun, but obviously that doesn't work out either. But I
Because
just
they're
feel like,
stupid.
yeah, I know.
Like,
I feel like they're really stupid in the first movie. Like,
yeah.
we need to set up, this is our final stand, but we're going to have sex in the toilets first. We're all going to have sex in the toilets first.
That's the weirdest part. They're always like, did we all have sex?
No.
Calm down.
All go to Pound Town. Me too.
Like,
Me too. The guy on his own.
Very strange. Very
But
strange.
what bothered me about the ending of One Low, because like I agree with Grana, like that whole thing of like, okay, the showdown, the Home Alone showdown, like they set up this cool thing, but then I don't know, just because they're teenagers, they're a bunch of idiots. Like they got these killers coming after them. They're all wearing, their friends are wearing blood on them, and like, okay, we have to take these pills. Let's have a D&M first. Let's like sit here and talk before we actually start this ritual while killers are on their way here. Like they could have had her dead ages ago, like, and not had their friends killed, But it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't. I agree with that, but and I really like the reveal of Good being the bad, like the big bad, like that's responsible for it all, and actually was like this witchcraft thing, and he's been doing it, and the whole family thing in it. Because even when 2 finished, and he like denies that something happened, he's like, "Oh, that guy just went crazy." I'm like, he's just trying to protect like his career. Like people won't believe him, and he's trying. He's like, "No, I'm meant to be a sheriff. I'm not going to say there's this ghost story or whatever." That's all I saw it as. And then with that reveal in 3, I'm like, "Oh my god, it was there all along!" Like it's crazy.
Like to be honest, I could probably be swayed that number 1 is worse. I just think that the flag of the third film is the period piece. Like, even though it's half period piece, half 1994 part 2, it's like it's clearly marketed as this. And it's like that's what it's about. It's the origin story. I think that is the worst of them all. So it's like, if you could cut that out and just have the last hour, I would like the third film a lot more. But I just don't like any of the actual horror storyness of it.
But you really enjoyed the scene where the kids get all their eyes stabbed out.
Yeah, so 2 standout scenes. That scene's phenomenal. Like,
yes,
and like kudos to these films for not pulling punches. Like,
that's true. Yeah,
it shows kids with their eyes gouged. It's like, shit, this is a young adult horror series. And it's like
Netflix main page. Like, here you go, kids.
It's fantastic. Like, I love that they did that, and the pig eating. Like, that is the kind of stuff that again I love about folk horror. I think it's all super cool. But partially, again, it's like, yeah, I've read The Crucible. I've seen The Witch. I've seen this stuff before. I know what happens. I also think the third one it tries really hard to make this big thematic point, and it falls really flat. Like, it's trying to compare the witch trials and like that part of American history to the oppression of like both racism and of like oppression of LGBT people with Sam and whoever the main character is. I'll find her name in a minute. Dina?
Yeah.
Like, them being accused as witches, it's clearly making a statement saying, hey, look, the persecution of LGBT people is equatable to the witch trials. And I think that's very condescending. I think it's belittling of the actual, like, it really misunderstands the witch trials and the shit going on there. And so I found it really kind of frustrating to be like, you can't compare these things. You can't say the witch trials is the same as that, but that's what they're doing.
I think you can if you're a bit more subtle about it. The problem is it's just like, here's our giant hammer. We're going to hit you over the head with it for the next 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like the whole
You can
thing
handle
of
it better. Like,
one day we'll be able to kiss in the public, and then they go and kiss in public back in present day and stuff like that. It's obviously like witch trials was all. It's very based in misogyny and sexism against women who are just like, that woman cut a fingernail. She's a witch. Burn her. Like just for this crazy kooky stuff. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think there's so much more to it than that, and you're right. You can draw parallels for sure, and clearly have a sense of like the same problems and the same like ignorance that caused this also causes something else in a much more subtle way. But the film is really saying, look, these guys are witches. These 2 characters are witches because they're gay. And it's like that's it's like hitting you over the head. It's like, look at what we're trying to say, and I'm like, nah, piss off with that. I get what you're trying to do, but I don't think it's a good job at it.
And I think like it's thematically kind of out of place because that's not like super relevant to the present time. It's not like they're getting killed or very much prejudiced against, other than like the kid's mum, really, about like their sexuality.
Mm.
It's not
Which
like
is
that's
like
an
kind
ongoing
of surprising
thing.
for a movie set in 1994. Like 1994
Yeah.
is not 2021. Like it's not the progressive day and age we live in now. Like they could have gone a lot harder on that, and maybe it would have made a better point. But yeah,
Yeah, I
you're
think
right.
you're
It kind of
right.
comes out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
And this was part of the discourse that I saw online a lot. People like a lot of people got that out of these films. It's like it's got two main characters who are gay, and that's obviously a big step forward representation. And it's good because it's in the first two films. It's not their whole identity. It's not just like look, they're gay characters. They're like no, that's who they are, and I think that's a better way to present it.
absolutely.
But
And
then
I think
three,
it's done well in like
yeah,
the first one. Like I kind of liked that. You know, she's talking about Sam, and like me, my personal bias, I just assumed it was a guy. And then when they show the jock guy grabbing the girl's butt, I'm
Mm.
like, oh, like that's her boyfriend hooking up with this new girl. You know, like it still
Yeah.
plays it to that thing of
Oh,
like,
they're
oh, she's
totally trying to pull
watching.
the rug out from under you. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's played for like a thing of like, ah, we tricked you.
for sure.
But that's the thing. It's not really like beat over your head as like this thing that's like we're fighting against this like this judgment and all this sort of stuff. And it's
No,
like the witch trial stuff is all centered around that.
yeah,
And especially just with the guy getting rejected as well.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
like that, a guy getting rejected, that can play into witch trials. But combine it, yeah, I see what they're going for, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I stand by my original point. 3 is the worst for that.
Luke, I think you're the decider. Does anyone want to come with me on number 2 as being the worst?
No. I like
Gerardo, explain why.
It's too convenient that pit toilet leads into a cave that has the heart of the devil in it. Come on now. They spend far too much time winching people in and out of that toilet. I've had enough.
So do you actually think number 2 is the worst?
I didn't love number 2, but the more I think about it, I think I like it better than. I think I really enjoyed the atmosphere of 3 and the part 2 of 1994. So I don't know, toss up between those two as mine.
He's taking shots at us because we've been trashing on his favorite one. So now he's like, you know what? That stupid toilet. But
it's a deal breaker.
I liked 2 a lot. So
which one are we picking for the worst then?
Part 3, 1660s.
Oh, that's fine. Like I said, I don't have super strong feelings about these movies. Like they were good. They're hard to separate anyway because they're so interwoven, these movies, and like I don't know. I can't even. I have to even guess that like, oh, we're filming in this mall today, so we might as well film the final scene of the whole series as well as the first scene because they both set there. Like it feels like all these movies are filmed at the same time.
And
yeah,
it's a similar talk of like all the other trilogies we've done. Like, I don't think 3's bad. I enjoyed 3 just as much as the others. Really, like it's not like I've left that film and I was like, oh, that was the worst. But I enjoy the other 2 more personally.
So, Grana, would you have said number 3 is the best then?
I enjoyed it the most. I think, I had the most fun with it. But I think, I have to be in a certain mood for horror. Like I think I was in that mood maybe when we got to the third one. And like I enjoy that slow, creepy rise, or I enjoy where the victims get back at the killer.
Yeah.
Which you get both of those things in the third one, not so much in the others. So
yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. See,
sorry for shitting on your film.
I was gonna,
like I said, this isn't like saying Alien 2 shit. Like I'm not that
we
into
wouldn't
these
do
movies.
that. Actually, while we're on Alien 2, no, I'm not going to. Yeah, I was going to say when you said that, like you had the most fun with number 3. I was like, man, that's strange to me. Like, because 3's like the least fun with the 1660. It's very unsettling and probably the creepiest. I would like it doesn't have that fun vibe of horror to me, but it does have part 2, which
creepy stuff can be fun though, right? Like, that's why you go. That's why anybody watches any movie for fun.
It's adrenaline, and
there's people that go out and watch Hostel and stuff for fun.
Yeah, Conan, by the sounds of it, like he's got all the like early tellings of.
I don't watch
the signs were there.
I do Hostel for fun. I invite people over and just drill their teeth out.
You see, like that's a sign. Like that's something that we should be talking to people.
We should have
about.
noticed these clues, like when he said he murdered people.
Oh, these audio bites will be used from years from now. But
Yeah, the court cases.
please don't, because then like this will actually be really messed up. But yeah, no. So it's I think 3 is the worst personally.
That's fine.
We agree.
All right. So what are we blaming for 3 being the worst then? Why is it? Is there someone in particular to blame, or
This is where you can go into the accents, I think, and
Yeah.
like, the acting.
you can blame entirely both the choice to put all the actors in these roles.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that.
I think it makes no sense. It's completely superfluous, and it creates a lot of moments where it's like, oh, Sadie Sink's in this film, and she's not. She's in one scene where she's skipping around with the other kids, but she never.
Yeah,
And the crazy preacher, like the Robert Pattinson type guy, he.
I think he was a good actor though. I thought he was good in both
He
the
is.
Slash role in Note 2 and as that in 3.
But the issue is in the third one, like the characters they're trajected over to clearly represent something. Like Dina is made the witch, Sarah Fear, to be like, look, she is the persecuted victim in the current day and in the past.
Yeah,
But then to have other characters like Robert Pattinson, who was actually a really good guy in the second film,
yeah,
then become the evil psychotic preacher guy makes no sense. It's not the
Yeah.
same character at all. So there's no reason to translate that. It's just to be like, look, we have these actors. Why not use these actors
why
again?
make our budget higher? Let's just
Yeah.
use the same actor.
We
And
can
it's-
save money.
It's a thing like, and like I said, I enjoyed seeing all the characters, but I completely get the complaint of like they're there for no reason other than like, hey,
Mm.
everyone's back, like in the same movie. I think 3, it could have been interesting to see it as a bunch of new characters that we actually hadn't seen, because it does run into that whole thing of, I don't know, the Back to the Future Irish Marty McFly, like thing of like they're all like the same people, like they all look the same and stuff like that. And obviously, it's just our vision of that because they intercut like Sarah Fier being who she actually was, and
The real one. Yeah.
but it is just it's smashing you over the head of like, look, they're both the same, going through the same thing, and like it's just a different time.
If you use different actors, it becomes a much more subtle point. Like it's not so over the top, so over your head.
And you could be like,
It leaves the
oh,
audience to do something smart, right? Like,
then you could be like, oh, that's Good's great ancestor, and he started all this, instead of being like, oh, there's Good. Okay,
I
so
mean,
he's just
I'd probably be a bit more okay with Good being in the same role because it's like this is Good's direct
of any, because he's
ancestor.
like the devil. He's
because it's him,
making
like
sense.
it's his same family, right? So they're obviously going to look similar, and that's a pretty
Yeah.
common trope in movies to be like someone's great grandfather looks identical as them for storytelling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to have Dina be Sarah Fier, who has no relation.
Yeah.
Like none of the other characters have that, so it's just
And her
it's
girlfriend be her girlfriend, and this
Yeah.
person be that person.
Yeah. Oh, and also, all right, and the accents are awful. Every time Dina talks in that, with her dumb Irish accent, I want to tear my ears off. It's
I think
awful.
This is 3's downfall, I think, is it very much feels like these kids acting in a 1660s period piece. They don't feel like they're from that period. Like it feels
Not at all.
like, hey, we're in a play, and like we're doing this.
this is the Shady Side school play from
It
1993.
is. Yeah.
If that was the
Shady
reveal,
Siders.
the whole thing was just a play, that would have been a lot more fun.
Yeah, when someone actually gets like killed and like, oh god, okay. Cut.
I also really hate the rave, the weird like
Yeah,
people in the 16th century were not having raves and like, nah, man, free love. Let's just all go out and smoke drugs and have sex. All right. These are Puritan times, even though they wouldn't have been as like Puritan as we all imagine. They would not have just been off having like this wild party like that. It's really disjointed.
The only thing from that I kind of liked that, like the drug dealer from the first one, like her thing was called blueberries, like that was her nickname for her drugs. And in the third one, she's literally handing out these blueberries that make people like trip out. It was kind of a fun thing, but yeah, I agree. Like during that scene, I'm just like, I don't know, it doesn't feel natural to
it was
this.
extremely out of place. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anyone else to blame.
I was just waiting for one of them to start twerking.
This will be a big thing in 400 years.
Your kids are gonna love it.
I'm glad they didn't do that at least.
I kind of would have. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think there's anyone to blame because these are all, again, it's all the same, except the actors. It's all the same creative team. It's just the actors.
So, is there anyone who stood out from number 3 that deserved better?
Yeah, I like Robert Pattinson type guy.
It's not actually Robert Pattinson,
No,
is it?
it's
Who
not.
is it?
But it
His
totally
name's-
is.
his
As I was
name's
watching, I was like,
McCabe
man,
Spy.
this dude just reminded me of Robert Pattinson, like so
He's got the
much,
same-
especially
He's
in the
got the
third
same
one.
dead eyes. Yeah.
Not so much in 2, but as the drunk dude in the third one, I was like, maybe I'm relating it to that Netflix film he was in with Tom Holland last year, where he was like a creepy,
The devil.
yeah,
or
the
whatever.
devil something sees
The
us.
devil.
Or,
The devil,
devil
you
has
know.
eyes.
That's not it.
No, don't know. Anyway,
Anyway,
but it just reminded me of him and like the hair and stuff. I was just like, oh my god, look, it's Batman. It's the new Batman, like emo Batman. But I thought his performance was good though, and I believed him. I think Good is pretty good,
Yeah, I was
as well.
Good is the other one who stands out. I think he gave a really good performance.
And Britta.
It's so weird having Britta in here.
It is a bit. She's really Britted herself for the rest of the
Yeah. I'm glad she's still getting work, but it's hard to separate her from that.
I was
persona.
able to. I wouldn't be able to now that I've watched Community, but yeah.
Yeah. Hey, sure. Even when you hadn't seen it, you were like, "This girl, she's gonna screw stuff up." I can tell.
I was just waiting for Jeff Winger to come out.
Right.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson deserved better.
Right? Do you have anybody?
Nah, I don't think so.
Okay, who do you think deserved better in the first one then? Which is what you thought that was the worst?
Oh,
Breadbasket Girl.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. The movie didn't. Oh, no, Maya Hawke. I want more of her in the movie. I was really hoping she came back somehow because I really like her. I think she's entertaining to watch, and she dies
Is that the actress's
almost
name?
immediately.
Yeah.
Maya Hawke, yeah.
And so she's from Stranger Things, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the last season.
She's also
That's-
Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter.
She is.
Oh,
Like that's why she's in this because she's riffing on that that vibe of like she was in.
more like,
Yeah, like
staff person. Like it's
Yeah.
because these are really like Stranger. This film has Stranger Thing connections.
There's like
Um,
4 people from Stranger Things in it. Like
Yeah, and so it's clearly playing on it because Maya Hawke blew up after Stranger Things. Everyone was like, "Oh, she should be the next sort of actress in everything."
Next to Uma Thurman.
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah, she's tops.
All right. Have we got a quick fix for the third one? How do we make it a good movie?
I do.
Go for it.
I'll just say before Conan, I'll just say like I touched on it earlier, like and what Conan touched on it is just have new actors as them roles. Conan.
Yeah, that would actually fix it as we've got it a lot. I think. I also I found that having it as 16th century felt very separate. Like 1994 and 1978 are close, right? What's that? It's quick maths. That's less than 20 years.
Yeah.
So like and then you've got a leap of 400 years back. I think if you had this as like I'm testing my knowledge here of like other horror genres. But like if I don't know, like a 50s horror film or something, or like riffing on another sort of genre like that, or somehow going back not so far, keeping it still in like the 20th century.
Baseball bat kid time.
There you go. Like even like that weird that's a good one. 50s America, the nuclear family,
Milkman.
this whole idea of like happy, friendly America is like after the war exceptionalism. That real like cut out
White picket fence.
Yeah, white picket fence. Wives are really happy and cheery, and husbands all wear suits and smoke cigarettes and are John Hamm. Do that as a horror film, and it's just like the milkman and the kid completely dispelling this American myth. Yeah. And that then leads a lot better as well into I think the commentary it's trying to make.
Yeah, I'd be in for that.
I mean, Baseball Bat Kid was stuff of horrors for me. Like every time he showed up in just that quick clip of him smacking someone in the bed,
Yes.
I was like, "Oh no, I can't sleep tonight now."
They keep showing that over and over again.
And I was like, "What is that?" And even when we were watching the second one, and that dude was getting sick, and I thought he was going to lay down in the bed in the cabin. I was like, "Oh no!" I was like, "This is what's going to happen." I was like, "Baseball Bat Kid's coming from somewhere."
Luke, have you ever seen your son with a baseball bat?
Now every time. No.
He just walks in the lounge room, he's just tapping it against something. Like,
oh my God,
Lord help me.
Stop it. He's like, what? No, he's never gonna have a baseball bat again. No. It's I don't know, man. Him and the milkman I found so creepy, and
Yeah.
they've kind of left open to what their story was and who they were. So I think that we'll get more on that down the line because I'm sure they're going to milk this franchise down the line again.
In my super quick research, I think there is more books, right? Like that do have those characters in them.
From what I've gathered, yeah, these films are kind of original stories off the material, so they're not direct adaptations.
They said it's not like this is this book, but
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the books
It's like,
have Sarah Fier and like similar
yes.
characters and stuff like that.
So they're kind of like 3 original stories in the broader universe. So yeah, you could totally riff that if it.
I'd be keen for every Halloween have a standalone, like the Milkman one.
And Netflix said they want to make this an extended universe. They want to turn this into more than just the trilogy. They want to bring it into sort of make it, basically just like create as a sort of as a pit to throw all their horror ideas into and just be like, this is in there as well, and this riffs on that. Like it's kind of it's a good idea being in a post Marvel world. I don't know how long that quality lasts for, but I'll still watch them.
Did anyone else think it was really awesome to have like, I don't know if it's just because of this podcast. I thought it was just so cool for this new movie trilogy to just be exist within a month, like to have 3 feature-length films all released shortly after each other that follow along as like a arc. I thought it was really cool, and I'd be so down for other franchises and stuff to do that instead of like a Netflix series where there's 3 seasons or whatever. Like I kind of like this 3-movie thing that they did.
Yeah, no, that's why I watched this, because it's like as soon as they released the first one, they said this is part of a trilogy. We're doing it every 2 weeks. It's like I'm so down for that. I can easily watch a film every 2 weeks. I'm excited to get into something that's not, like you say, not going to be 3 seasons long. Like, I love this.
And man, keep us in business.
Just
pump out trilogies, man. We just have all these trilogies.
We're scraping the bottom of the barrel currently.
Oh, I know. Back to the Future.
We have to do Star Wars eventually.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like people making movies probably like this too, because you do get to like, we're having kid actors, but we're not doing it over 3 years, so they don't look like they're 10 years older by the end of the series. Like, and
don't have to keep shaving their beards.
They
we
don't
don't
go
have
through
to keep going
unfortunate
back to this
growth spurts.
mall every 3 years. Like, we can film the mall scene at the end of the series and at the start of the series right now while we're here ready to go. Like, yeah, I think hopefully it means that, like, because we talk about this nearly every trilogy. If you have a creative team that works the whole way through, it's such a better trilogy for it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you get these trilogies where different people have come in along the way, and that's where they start to become a mess.
And I think, it also makes sense. Like the people doing it, they're contracted for 3 films, so they get to make 3 films, so it's a good payday. Like it makes sense for them, and I don't know. It's just so refreshing and to not have. It kind of frustrates me that they're like, we want to make this an extended universe now. I'm like, I kind of want it to just stay as a trilogy and to be like, we've made a trilogy. We don't need to keep. We don't need to have 50 films in this to make it relevant. I'm like, no, just. I don't know. I'm of 2 minds.
If Fear Street Part 2 was not coming out till next year, would you have been interested in it when it came out?
Probably not. No.
It's got that. It's kind of like that bingey thing where you're like, "Oh, this is great," until it's like over, and you're like, "Okay, well, I don't know if I can get back into it like that far down the line." But now, like watching this though, if they do a spin-off next year, like I'll watch it day one, sort of thing. I'd be keen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool. But I really like these films.
All right. Which film wins? I think you guys are both gone number 2. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the camp vibe. I thought like the axe murderer was really cool. I don't know how I didn't even pick up that it's the dude with the sack on his head until the sack went on his head, and I was like, oh my god! I was like, how did I not get this from like the start of this movie?
And so the plaid shirt and the axe didn't give it away.
I know. I did it. It really didn't. I'm just obviously was tired and just in for the ride, but I don't know. I really like that. And it has that sort of thing where, they have like I think it's Alice, the girl with the short blonde hair, like the punk girl who you think is, like she's the bitch, like the bully sort of girl at the start. And then like them exploring the caves for an hour, like Grana said, like they hash out their stuff. And I liked that character, and I was like, oh, I was enjoying it. And it's brutal when she snaps her leg. Like it's like there's a bunch of stuff that happens in there.
Rough.
It's really brutal. And then like for her to get killed off as well, it's like, oh god, like Oh, I felt so bad for the kids, like the little chubby kids with glasses that are like the
Yeah.
blue captain. They're like, "Hey, stay here, I caught you," and the red one's like, "See a nerd." That poor
I
kid
know.
who then gets chopped up into
And then he
little
gets
parts.
chopped apart.
It's
I felt so sad.
brutal, so brutal. And I really like the actor for young Good in that. I thought he was good.
Yeah.
He was good.
Real
Um,
dreamboat.
and I didn't pick up on it. Like, obviously, he has that thing when he walks in the room and you sort of watch it back. He has that reaction of like seeing what's happened, and it's obviously this thing, but there's guilt in there too because he's actually the one that's commanded this.
His
And
family causing it. Yeah.
um, I had this when watching it from the very start. For some reason, start watching the second one, I thought Ziggy was C. Berman. Like when she was like, "Oh, when I was at a camp, my sister died." I was like, "Oh, that's her," And it starts out with Ziggy. I was like, "Oh, that's C. Berman," and then halfway through, I was like, "Wait a minute, the other one's like Cindy Burnham." I was like, so it's her then?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course it's her." And I was like, I really thought it was Ziggy. And then obviously they kill both of them and then reveal that Ziggy's just a nickname and it's actually Christine Burnham. But
No, I thought that was the way they did it intentionally. Some stuff I read said the same. Was like everyone thought that Siggy would be the one who gets killed, and it's a rug swap, a rug pull, and it's like, oh no, she's actually, and that's why they call her Ziggy, which is clearly not a name.
yeah, no. But
The whole time my wife's like, but she's got red hair. How is that the same character?
that's what I said. That's what
Yeah.
I just associated it with her straight away.
Some people grow out of red hair, I guess.
But it's yeah, I don't know. That whole scene where they both are getting stabbed, like, and you've got the milkman stabbing her with a knife, and the other one's just smacking her with Cindy with the axe is brutal. And then he like resuscitates her with like pumping her heart after she's had 10,000 stab wounds.
Yeah, there's some leap in logic there.
But
It's a miraculous recovery.
I think looking back, I think he brings her back because like he can do what he wants. Like he gets what he wants. So
Yeah, I guess that could be true.
like he's
the
made
one
all these
getting all the
sacrifices.
success, yeah.
He can get what he wants, like because of the sacrifices he's made. So he was able to bring her back from her stab wounds by pumping her heart. I don't know, but yeah.
I guess my piece on it is I think number 2 does it cool. I like what it does to expand the lore, like showing you that there's this weird beating heart underneath it is really interesting. Like just again, sort of digging further into that layer of like how the trees are under this sort of weird cave ruin thing that have summoned up. It does a good job of explaining it. And then same as you, like I love the camp vibe. Like I watched American Horror Story 1984 when it came out, which I think was a couple of years ago now. But I just feel like since Stranger Things, that 80s camp riff has been going in my mind, and I love it. So I was like, yeah, I'm always down for a summer camp slasher. Like, it's so much fun. I think Sadie Sink's got really good chemistry with whoever plays the young Good. Like, they've got their relationship feels really genuine. Like, they're these, it's the typical sort of outcast and the cool guy, but it's a little bit different, and like he's a bit weenie. I just feel like that's a really nice, authentic sort of relationship there. And then it does feel like, the dreams of summer kind of all get hacked apart by this crazy dude with an axe.
Yeah. Did Grana, I noticed a face you pulled. Did you like the beating heart thing?
I don't know. It was just so weird. All right, so they build a mall over the campsite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't think there's like massive excavations required, soil testing, all sorts of things that might reveal a giant beating heart underneath the mall? Like,
you underestimate the power of Sheriff Good.
I guess that's true.
Chief of police is just like
magic is the answer, right?
I seen he was just like, you don't need to dig anything here, and they're like, okay, you're the boss.
All right, good call.
So he's a good guy. Okay, why would he lie?
And I forget what else I was going to say, but I liked the vibe of number 2. There's the whole thing with the actual bully chick, and she gets locked in that room for ages as well while the killer's running around.
Yeah.
The poor dude gets decapitated, and his body falls through the portaloo and drops down onto the girl with the broken leg, which is brutal as well. But yeah,
making the play capture the flag, just like spreading them all out in the forest just before the killer comes is a pretty good.
Yeah.
There was some line in that when they're playing capture the flag, and he's like, like the game's effing over. People are dying. Like there's people dead everywhere.
Yeah.
Like stop playing capture the flag. People are getting their heads cut off or something.
Because
Cracked me up so much.
that does add a lot of tension because everyone's waiting and watching, and it's all
Yeah.
dark and quiet, and it is like it becomes this really creepy setting of just like and like I remember playing like those games back in high school, like primary school with friends, where it's like play hide and seek around the street, and it's pitch black, and
Yep.
you're like, shit, I actually don't know where. Like anyone could be out here right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it always ends that way too.
What with the axe murderers?
Yeah.
No, I've definitely had those moments, like playing capture the flag, even in an empty field, being like, I could get abducted right now, and no one would even know because I'm crawling through grass 100 meters from anyone else.
I'm
Like,
hiding so good.
yeah,
But and that's the thing, like it's heartbreaking almost, like because he's one of the captains and he's like the team counselor guy, and like these kids are walking up to him like, "Oh, hi, Counselor Tom," and he's just standing there with an axe and just like tears them apart, man. It's so brutal. And like what you said earlier, like they don't pull punches with it, and it's awful. It doesn't make you feel good at all. Like it's yeah. But
did you feel like any of the kills in number 2 were particularly creative though? Like none
Like,
stand up to the bread slicer scene.
That's true.
they're
all
axe kills, but
yeah.
I kind of like some of them are like really sloppy. Like there's the couple that just hook up and he just like smacks it straight into her throat. There's the first one where where he first turns and the guy's like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" And he just goes at him over and over again, and it's really brutal. But nothing like the bread cut. I think that's like the main kill that stands out through it. Did anyone else pick up on the fly straight away, like in the first and the second one? Yeah.
Like, I mean, flies just don't turn up in movies and make sound without them being for some reason.
Yeah. No, exactly. But it's weird because obviously with the first one, it's the first thing you see with that guy in the mall. I do like in the second one, like the flies flying around him. They're in the porthouse, so it's kind of more of like a fly would probably be here thing, but it doesn't land on him. Then like you can see it's going near him, and then she distracts him, and it like flies away, and it comes back again later and lands, and that's when he hears the voices and stuff, and it's like obviously the flies from the weird beating heart pile of goo have to touch you.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed that a lot. I'm sorry, I'm just looking. Ted Sutherland, who played the young Sheriff Good, he did the voice of Jack Marston in Red Dead Redemption 2.
There you go.
Oh, true.
Fun fact.
There you go. I'm going to go play that now. Shoot him.
All 150 hours.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they want to add?
Good as evil.
Have you guys seen Parks and Rec? I got a real sense of Eagleton Pawnee vibes between Shadyside and what's the good town called?
Sunnyside.
Sunnyvale.
Sunnyvale. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, it's true. Eagleton Pawnee. That is one thing I got from there. It's a bit weird. Like Shadyside is just this perceived shithole, and everyone's just like murder capital USA. It's the slums. Everyone dies there.
But
would that town really,
because of the Sunnyvale, like Sunnyvale Valers are doing that.
But I'm not. Would that ever really exist? Would there just be this weird town like next to another town? It's like over the tracks there, you will get murdered and you will never leave. But next door, you've got nothing but mansions, baby.
It's very strange. That's why it reminded me of Parks and Rec.
I mean, I don't know. We all had that sort of school in our town that was the dropkick, dirty one, and then we all went to the good one. So
I guess
we're at Sunnyvale.
It was kind of across the tracks, actually.
Yeah, it was up near the hospital where all the murder victims have to go straight across the road. If you know, you know.
Yeah, looked like a prison.
Yeah, basketball courts, all shady.
Yeah. I think Sadie Sink's really talented actress. Like she was big in Netflix. Stranger Things, she was good, but I think in this, it's like, she could actually she could have a whole career as like a final girl or just like she's a very talented young actress. So
yeah,
I'm keen to see what she goes on to do.
And final thoughts for me, like after watching, especially like the third one, man, I'm keen for the new Batman with Robert Pattinson. I think it'll be good
because he was in this film.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Luke's going to spoil my segue, but I feel like when we started this podcast, I really wanted to get onto the dodgy trilogies. Like I wanted to watch the Trolls trilogy, but before we get there, we've got these big trilogies hanging over our heads. So let's get one of them out of the way. Let's do the Nolan Batman trilogy next week. Next fortnight.
I'm excited to find out how he got them scars. Finally.
I haven't seen Batman Begins in a long time, so I'm keen to revisit that film.
I haven't seen
Oh.
the first or third movies in those. I haven't seen any of those movies in a long time, but yeah, particularly the first and the third one.
First
Yeah.
one holds up, man. Arguably the best of the trilogy.
We'll talk about that in 2 weeks' time.
I remember loving that movie a lot when it first came out. All right,
Liam
well,
Neeson, man. Hell yeah.
thank you for listening to The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. Catch us on socials at Good, Bad, Worst Pod. If you like listening to us talk about movies, you'll love watching us talk about games on our podcast Bonus XP. Check it out on YouTube or your favourite podcast app, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
You always hurt the one you love.
At least. Yeah.